doing that, I was face to face with it. It was holding me by my throat, and it felt like it was sucking something out of me.
I probably should have been more scared than I was when I witnessed the exorcism.
I turned and looked on my right side. When I did, there's a beam on the side of the tree, a large beam. It's looking at me and I'm looking at it.
After I hit the lock button and looked back up, I saw red eyes staring back at me.
That they're going to show multiple gods all over the earth, be able to speak in people's languages, and at that point, it kind of converge into this one entity, which will be revealed as extraterrestrial. You'll realize that aliens are the gods of old, and at that point, it'll wipe religion out of the context of humanity.
No, it couldn't have been a person, I know that. I know that people can't run through the woods like that.
So this thing comes into view, and I see it. It's 50 yards away from me. It's walking on two legs. It's huge. This is a big, hairy-looking being.
Welcome. I'm your host, and this is uNcomfortable. Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Eric Szilagyi. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to have it featured on an upcoming episode, please don't hesitate to email me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. Please make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65. Most importantly, please help share the show with others and make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you can. That is the main way that you can help in getting the show out in front of more people. And with more people listening, that means more great people like tonight's guest coming forward with their stories. Uncomfortable-pod.com is now up and running, and that is the official landing page for the Uncomfortable podcast. If you are a fan of the show and you are interested in helping support what we do here, please go over to patreon.com/uncomfortablepodcast770 and see if any of the 3 tiers there interest you. I'll be uploading a little Halloween bonus for the members in just a few short days. I've had a lot of fun working on that. The link for the Patreon and the Uncomfortable Discord will be in the show notes below. Tonight's guest is Josh, and Josh hails from the fine state of Minnesota. He has, among other things, had a personal experience with our favorite elusive, hairy creature that we all love to hear about. So, if you're ready, let's get into it. Josh, welcome to Uncomfortable.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here, my friend. You reached out to me. I think our first interaction was on Discord, correct?
Yeah, it was one of your campfires.
Yep. And then, you kind of got me on the hook, and I was like, I got to talk to this guy. And you had some things going on, and I was like, oh, man, I hope this isn't going to be one of those where they waver and they want to tell their story, but they don't want to tell their story. And sure enough, you ended up sending me an email fairly recently with a little bit of a teaser in it. And then I asked you to provide kind of the bullet points of what had gone on without spilling the beans or anything. And it sounds like quite an experience you had.
Yeah, I'm glad I had it with my dog. I can tell you that much because she validated it for me.
What kind of dog do you have?
She's gone now, but she was a German. Oh, no worries. She's a German Shepherd Collie mix.
Nice.
Very smart, very protective.
So let's get into it. Walk me into what happened.
All right, well, it was probably 2009, 2010. Me and my buddies used to always go cruising, and it was just kind of really not the best weather, and there wasn't much going on, so we just decided to stick around and have a fire, and that's what we did. Had a couple beers, no big deal, and everybody was leaving, and I was sitting out on the porch having a cigarette, making sure everybody was good, getting where they needed to go, doing what they needed to do, and the dog was just going nuts to try to get outside, and I'm like, all right, so I let her out, go back, sit down, just kind of relaxing, waiting for her. Does her thing, and the yard, like when you go out of the porch, there's a light, and then the light, it doesn't expand very far, but I was watching her, and then she stopped, like dead stopped, could not call her. Calling her name, and it's not like her. She doesn't, and she wasn't like really going crazy, just staring. So I go out there and I look, and then I was watching her tail, and her tail was just slowly starting to go down between her legs. So I'm go out there and I'm looking. Finally, my light or my vision kind of got clear. I could see in the dark, a little better. And I was looking out in the field, and there's probably 3 trees, and they're very distinct. And it was the only thing between me and the field. And it was very moonlit in the back. So I'm looking, and I'm like, holy smokes, there's a bear standing there, on all fours. If you just kind of imagine the silhouette of a bear standing behind a tree. The tree was, I don't know, maybe 15 inches wide. Nothing huge, but not a small one. Mm-hmm. And it was probably 4-ish feet wide. And I'm like,
and it's on all fours? Hell? Is that what you said?
Well, I thought it was a bear standing on all fours at first, because I could just see the silhouette, and it was just like that kind of a shape of a mass. It was just like a kind of a mass I could see. It wasn't really detail oriented. I could just see like there was something there, and I just thought bear because that's the size and whatnot. Yeah. So I'm watching, smoking my cigarette, and I'm like, what is that? It's got to be, and it wasn't moving. But then all of a sudden, it like raises, it stands up. And I immediately knew it wasn't a bear because, yes, bears stand up. But when they stand up, they get narrower. And they're not 7-8 feet tall. At least the few little ones we have around here aren't. It maintained that width all the way up. And I'm like, all right. So, and then I'm just kind of in shock. And then its right arm, like its back was to me. It was leaning against the tree. Swung behind the tree, kind of wrapped around the tree, and it just kind of like a door. It just kind of swung around the tree and looked at me. And I didn't see like glowing red eyes, and I didn't see any orbs or no smell. I was just in shock. Like, there's no way I'm seeing what I'm seeing. And I was in shock. Like, I couldn't move. I don't want to say I was scared, but I was just trying to process what the hell I'm seeing.
And what's the distance you're at from this thing now?
This point was probably see where that light post is. Probably 20, 30 yards, maybe.
That's close.
It is pretty close. Well, and it was on. I know how big those trees are because I got a boat target hanging between them, and I walk up to them all the time. And it was 7, 8 feet tall. Well, then I was like in shock, and I'm processing this. Couldn't move. Didn't think to grab my phone. Didn't think anything. Just trying to look at this. My cigarette actually burnt my lip. Snapped me out of whatever trance I was in. And then I look up at the house, and the dog is at the house I didn't even know she ran away. She was up at the house trying to get in, whining, whimpering. At that point, I just ran back towards the house, and tomorrow's a new day. The way it wrapped around the tree, I get why some people call them tree peekers, but yeah, I don't know, man. It was
the way you described that, just hooking its arm around it and then just kind of swinging out, kind of like a door to get a look at you. That's a very common a very common, I don't want to say your description of that is common, but it's a very common event, how people always are reporting that these things wrap that massive arm around the base of the tree and then just kind of lean out and show themselves.
Yeah, and I wish that I would have been on the other side, because then I would have had more light to see. I really wanted to see its face, but I couldn't. It was just a giant mass. And like I tell people, like, obviously it's not scientifically proven, but I tell people, okay, well, it was either Bigfoot or it was Andre the Giant standing there wearing football pads, because this thing was massive.
So undoubtedly, without a shred of doubt in your mind, this thing was definitely not a bear.
No. I thought it was at first, but I mean, we have bear in Minnesota, yeah, but where I'm at in central Minnesota, there's not many, and I've never seen one that big. I mean, 7-8 feet tall and 4 feet wide. That's a big bear. Yeah. And the arms were, it wasn't proportioned like a bear. The arms were longer than a bear, sure. And the hand, I could see kind of like the shadowish, like I couldn't see exact fingers because it was kind of dark, but I could see the size of the hand. It was not a bear.
What are we talking about? Lighting conditions. What are we talking about? How much light was there? What were you able to take away from? And I understand it's a stressful situation. I understand you're trying to wrap your head around what you're looking at. It doesn't make sense, and there's a lot of things going on. But what can you definitively say about what you saw as far as defining qualities of the creature?
If I were to say anything, it was a giant man, because it was very comfortable on two legs, and it just stood up natural. Like like a bear is like, sometimes they do like that little hop thing or whatever, and kind of stand up, and they're kind of awkward when they stand.
Mm-hmm.
No, this thing was totally comfortable. And when its arms swung out, it just didn't seem buried me, and I've been in the woods since I was 6 years old. I've been hunting by myself and with a gun since I was 12. I mean, I've been out in the woods. I spent a lot of time in the woods, and it's just like the scariest noise I've ever heard was a fox, believe it or not. And I didn't know what that was until my dad told me. It's just, I don't know, man. I have a sense almost, and then the way my dog was acting too, if it was a bear, she probably would have charged it, like to scare it off. She was petrified.
Interesting, though, you said there was no smell that accompanied it. Do you know, were you aware, were you upwind of it, downwind of it?
I don't know what the wind conditions were. And you asked about the lighting. So I was standing underneath the yard light. There's a yard light between the porch and the garage. And there's probably, I would say, a 80-foot gap between the house and the garage. So I was standing in the middle of that, in the light, right underneath the light pole. And then probably, I don't know how far it is, but there's 3 trees that kind of go around the driveway there. So it was just outside of the light, but it was moonlit in the back. There wasn't like a forest behind it. It was an open field. There was just 3 single oak trees there, and it was very moonlit. So I got a good silhouette.
Obviously covered in hair.
From what I couldn't really define hair, but it was definitely, I mean, yeah, I would say it was hair. It was definitely hair. It definitely wasn't a naked dude standing there, I can tell you that.
Okay. So what happens next? How long are you guys looking at each other?
Well, I was probably, when I went outside to go see what my dog was looking at, I probably had half a cigarette left. And then I finally noticed it, and then it stood up 3-4 minutes, maybe.
Do you think its initial attention was drawn to your dog being out there?
I've been asked that, and I don't know, because it wasn't, I don't know if it caught wind of us or if my dog caught wind of it, I couldn't smell anything. At least I wasn't even in the heat of the moment. That was the last thing I was thinking about. I was
Sure.
trying to figure out what I was looking at, but
Absolutely.
nothing noticeable. So I don't know if she smelled them, but I don't know. I don't know if it was just sitting there and then it just maybe heard me asking the dog what's going on and wanted to check, and I wish, in hindsight, I would have actually not obviously walked up to it to shake its hand, but, backed up, not panic and run to the house like a little girl. I should have backed up to the house and then watched to see what it does. I don't even know where it went or if it ran away or walked away or what it did.
So you broke gaze with it and retreated to the house. So you don't know what it did. At the time that you turned from it, it was still standing there looking at you?
Yeah, when I looked at it, and then it swung around the tree when I seen it, and I was still looking at it. And then, like I said, my cigarette, I was in a train. I couldn't do anything. I can't explain that. I mean, I didn't have the sense of dread. I wasn't fearful for my life. I was just like, what in the hell is that?
But you're not indicating that you felt that you were in a trance because of this thing. It was just merely the onslaught of emotions and trying to figure it out, that you were just kind of like,
no, I don't think it did anything to me. Yeah, I don't think it did anything to me, but I was in shock. I just could not stop looking at it until. Well,
the reason I ask is because some people report that heaviness and that dreadful feeling from the possible existence of infrasound at the time of sightings like this. So I was just, for the listeners, I was trying to clarify that.
Oh yeah,
being in a trance was not necessarily, you weren't literally being put into a trance by this thing.
Yeah, no, I don't. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, obviously I was able to burning my lip, and then I looked at the house, and I think the dog's reaction got the better of me. So I just kind of was like, "Yep, if you're going in, I'm going in too."
I don't blame you. I would too.
So yeah, I mean,
I really would. I mean, my perfect sighting would be in a clear cut, a good 120, 150 yards away, great visual conditions, sun out, nothing to impede my vision, seeing it cross from left to right or right to left through a clear cut, and that would be my perfect, being real close to my car. Was anything closer than that, and with no mode of transportation to escape, I think I'd drop a load right there.
Yeah, like I said, I've heard other stories and encounters, and they're like, I just have the sense of dread. I didn't feel that. Now, I was definitely shocked, and I definitely ran to the house, and I don't even know why. That's not instinctually like me. My dad always raised us, don't run from predators, but I don't know what this thing does, eats and everything. I've heard stories and whatnot. Heard theories, but
so I
just kind of went off my dog's reaction.
At the time that you witnessed this, Bigfoot was already a thing in your reality, right? You were already had heard about them, knew what they were, had heard stories about them.
Yeah, I mean, I've always before this happened, I wanted Bigfoot to be real. I was always into the subject. I've seen, Finding Bigfoot and Expedition Bigfoot, and I've always been into that kind of stuff. I didn't always believe it. I thought I wanted it to be real, but I never seen one. So I'm like, maybe they're real. It'd be cool to see one day, and then. Literally, this happened, and like I told you earlier when we were talking, it just changed the whole paradigm of everything. I mean, everything.
So being that close, the next day, daylight out, nothing hiding in the shadows, do you go out and you look for prints? Do you look for hair on the bark of the tree? Do you look for anything?
We looked, and we just saw the grass was kind of bedded down. I mean, nothing. We didn't see any prints or hair. We looked, but there was nothing there.
Who is we?
Me and my dad.
Your dad went out with you. So there's got to be an uncomfortable conversation at some point from the time that you come in the house till the time your dad decides to go out with you to look at the area where you said you saw this thing. Tell me, how does that conversation go, and what's his reaction to what you say?
All right. Well, my dad is a very cut and dry, no bullshit kind of guy. Former military. He wakes up every morning early, goes, has a cigarette and his coffee, and gets on with his day. And I just happened to go out on the porch and have coffee with him and have a cigarette. And he said he noticed the dog was out there. My dog was out there. And he goes, why does she keep sniffing around that tree? And I kind of laughed. And he goes, what? And I'm like, there was something there last night. And he goes, what do you mean there was something there? Maybe Dad, I think there was a Bigfoot there. And he kind of looked at me. He's like, oh, Joshua. And I'm like, Dad, I'm not kidding. So we went and looked, and after, him seeing how the dog was reacting around the tree and noticing the grass was kind of laid down there, he's like, you weren't drinking, you weren't smoking? I'm like, no, nothing. I mean, I had a couple of beers, but even if you're drunk, you're not going to hallucinate a Bigfoot,
Right. Unless you're really drunk.
Yeah. I mean, and it was just a couple beers because we were all bored and fire got out. It was kind of an early night. This happened probably around 11-ish, 11:30-ish. So it's not,
what time of year?
Kind of late, but
what time of year was it?
It was fall this time of year.
Yeah.
But yeah, he finally talking to him and kind of just breaking everything down. I'm like, okay, enough with, just cut the crap. What do you honestly think? And he goes, he won't tell me certain details, but he just kind of always, yep, there's things out there. Just be mindful. Respect the woods, respect your surroundings, and you'll be good. And that's pretty much it. That's all he talks. He won't get into detail, but
really,
yeah, he and like he had an experience. He was letting his dogs out just a couple months ago, maybe. Months ago, and he's got 2 male labs, and he was saying how they both just kind of froze out in that field that was beyond where I was.
Same piece of property,
this was probably
right?
9:30. Yeah, same piece of property.
Okay.
Probably 9:30 at night, and he was out in the field with the dogs, and he was just telling me the story. I wasn't there or anything, and he said they both acted really weird, and then he kind of played it off like, oh, it was probably just coyotes. And I literally looked at him, and it's kind of one of those things like, no, because those dogs are not cower like that. Just like my dog wouldn't, if it was a bear, I'm not kidding you, Eric, my dog would have ran after it to protect me.
Yeah.
She was scared to death. So it's kind of one of those things, like when like I've told a lot of people this, and I get a lot of grief for it, and that's fine. You weren't there. You don't know what I saw, and you don't have to believe me. That's totally cool. You don't have to believe me. I'm not getting famous off this. I'm not making a dime off this. I want to tell a story. I want to get to the truth of everything. And that's why I listen to podcasts like this, because you guys bring on some good subjects, and it makes a guy think.
It does make you think. And I guess I'm curious as far as what you think. What do you think Bigfoot is? What do you think that you were looking at? Do you think that, because in the Bigfoot community, there's multiple sects, but two of the major ones are, you have the apers or you have the human. And, from my standpoint, I've heard enough stories and read enough experiences and talked to enough people that these things exhibit very human attributes. And
yeah, I can agree. Yeah.
I know that, like if you go to the zoo or, you can see the same thing on TikTok or Instagram Reels, gorillas and monkeys seem to be a very popular thing in these short videos. And you can see, everything from how they mate which I don't know why
Yeah.
anybody videotapes, but you can see how they mate. You can see how they groom themselves or each other. You can see how they behave with their babies. It's very, very human-like.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's me. Maybe that's me putting that human facade on them unnecessarily. But to me, it seems like with the vast amount of things that I've watched, heard, and read, that these things are more closely related to us than a dumb animal.
Yeah, I can see that, and I hear like people talk about the woo and all that. I never saw anything that was weird, or, obviously what I saw was weird, but like as far as aliens and all that, none of that. To me, this was just a normal animal, but it wasn't an animal. Like, it's hard to explain how you just get that feeling like, okay, that's not that. And it just, I don't know how to explain it. I would say I would have to agree with you that I personally, in my experience, it's more human or more animal. You hear it's just the missing link stories, or it's an ape, or I don't know, because gorillas are smart, but
that's interesting that you use that phrase, the missing link. I don't know what your age is. I'm 58. I've been around a while. And there for a while, the term missing link was used a lot. And that is not something you ever hear anymore. Nobody ever refers to something or in reference to a missing link. It's almost like that. It's almost like that has been written out of contextual conversation or print. They just don't ever use it anymore. And I wonder why that is. I thought that was a relatively good explanation for an umbrella of things that were not well understood.
Well, yeah, and I used to get it. I'm 35 and I've been watching Bigfoot stuff forever, and I love all the theories. But from what I saw, it's flesh and blood, and I would say it's more related to human. Apes are smart, but this thing was watching me, and it had total control of the situation. Like, if it wanted me or the dog, I didn't have a prayer. It was cool and calm and just kind of chilled and peeked around the tree, and that was enough for me.
That's an interesting attribute, you saying how calm and cool it was. And I think that is, I think that's important, because they are so comfortable in that outdoor, in that wilderness, in that is their living room, that's their bathroom, it's their everything.
Yep.
And they are so, that's what gets me about people that say, well, you can't get a picture of them, you can't get this. And, if I were to walk into your home and take a 2-inch little picture, tiny little frame, 2-inch picture, and go into your house and, unbeknownst to anybody, put that picture up hanging on a wall somewhere,
it would get noticed.
It would get noticed. And if you take that and you reverse the roles and you go out and you put a trail cam on a tree, do you really think it's that difficult for them to notice?
No. Well, and especially if they can see in a different spectrum. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's a possibility.
Yeah.
Or they can hear it maybe. I don't know. I'm telling you.
Or their sense of smell is that they can recognize the plastic is not a natural smell for that area. Or maybe their hearing is more acute, and maybe they hear the components, the internal components of a trail cam as it's taking a picture, so they recognize that that's something that they stay away from, because not that they know that they would have a picture taken of them, but it's an unusual sound.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know, like there's got to be something, because even the deer, I mean, you look at a trail cam, I mean, deer is not going to destroy your trail cam, but they notice it. They look up when the pictures start clicking.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and like you brought up the phone thing or the camera thing. And that's another thing is I grew up, with the father's former military, and guns are always a thing. You never play with them. They're not toys. We use them for this, this, and this.
Yep.
That's that. And it's safety, safety. Well, I can tell you right now, even if I had a gun on me at that time, or my phone for that matter, those are the last two things I would think of. I never even thought to grab my phone. My instinct was, okay, dog's trying to get in, I'm going to listen to her.
Yeah. Well, the gentleman in my episode 2 and 3, in Cass County here, he had his phone in his hand when it walked out in front of him in the swamp. His phone was in his hand. He had just been talking to his dad and his brother, or his brother-in-law, across the other side of the swamp. So when this thing walked out, he was literally 10 inches away from raising and pushing a button to get a video or a picture of this thing. Never even dawned on him.
Oh, and it kicks your ass in hindsight when you think about it. But, you know, in the heat of the moment, you just don't think about stuff like that.
Sure.
And even like people are like, well, look at these videos. All these videos are blurry. Okay, well, have you ever been in shock before? Like, I'm surprised they're even able to pull their phone up and click any app, let alone try to get a video or something.
Right.
It's shaking so bad, you know, you can't focus when you're doing that.
So what about the area? You know, you said this happened around 2009 or so.
Yep.
You seem like a relatively intelligent guy. If I'm reading the room right, I would think that not only have you heard about and seen on other shows about these things, but now you've had a real life experience. It would make sense to me that you would naturally want to delve into this more. So did you start taking a look at your general area in the state? I think you said, central Minnesota? Central Minnesota. There's some good wildlife refuges around that, you know, I've always wanted to try to get out and see if I can find anything. And we've gone out a couple times, and my wife's not really into the whole Bigfooting thing, but she loves being out in nature. And we were out in a wildlife refuge around the area, and she had said, she goes, do you feel like we're being watched right now? And I just kind of laughed, and I started looking around, didn't see anything, but I'm like, yeah, well, we are in the woods, you know, it could be anything. But yeah, I don't know. It's the area I'm at, it's hard to explain. It's a lot of field. I mean, we're out by the Sherburne County Wildlife Refuge, so I mean, we kind of narrowed down a little bit for you, but I mean, there's 50,000 acres right there that anything can roam around in. So, but have you looked into reports in your state? Have you utilized either the Bigfoot mapping project or?
I have that app, and I did look, and there's not too many sightings. There's a couple around the area, but not as many as I thought there would be, at least not on the Bigfoot mapping project. And I never even thought to call it in and say, I just kind of one of those things like, okay, well, I saw it, I know it's real, and gonna leave it at that. And then I hear all these people talking about it, and then I'm like, well, gave me a little courage to come on and talk about my story. Hopefully it helps others bring it out too, you know?
Well, you know, I'm actually looking at the map of Minnesota right now on the on Scott's app, and you know, to be fair, you say there wasn't many reports.
There is in the state, just in the area that I'm at. I haven't looked at it in a couple months, but
you know, there are a significant number of sightings and reports in the state. And the reason I bring that up is in Michigan, you know, most people think I'm from Michigan. I lived in Michigan for the length of my marriage, and I now live right at the state line. But Michigan is a good example because it is an unusual state in that it has that upper peninsula. And, Bigfoot used to be, seemed to be an upper peninsula phenomenon. Not a lot of population up there. Houses are very sparse, a lot of space in between, a lot of tree cover, a lot of undeveloped land up there. And and to get to the lower peninsula, you either have to go by boat or you have to cross the Mackinac Bridge.
Okay.
And there seems to be a pretty good amount of Bigfoot reports in the upper mid portion of Michigan. Not in the upper peninsula, but above Grand Rapids before you get to Traverse City, say.
Okay.
So in that top third of the state. And I've talked to several people who think that there is some sort of a migration or a migratory pattern to the way they move, not necessarily that they're leaving an area nomadically, but I guess one that comes to mind is Mike Famelant from New Jersey. He was convinced that there were 2 or 3 clans or families in northern Jersey that pretty much kind of made the rounds around the state based on the blooming and the production of berries in a certain bush. He said they would bear fruit a couple times a year, and one group would come through and devastate the area with eating everything up, and then another group would come back in later in the year when they were filling back up with berries again. So I think even though there may not be a significant amount of sightings in the area that you're talking about, there is a pretty good chance that they're moving through that area.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm only an hour away from Reamer, Minnesota, and that's like the Minnesota Bigfoot capital. So, I mean, they're around. I mean, and they could be passing through. I mean, I don't think they live on my parents' property, but they could be passing through. I mean, it was early fall. I mean, good time to there's lots of big acreage around, and it's a good time to get out of Minnesota, before the winter hits. So
yeah. Have you ever looked into cave systems in Minnesota? Do you know, is there a significant cave system?
Not that I know there is, but not that I'm aware of. I know there's some caves up in Duluth you can go explore, and there's some down south of the cities that you can go explore. But in my area, no. We went up to the Iron Range and we went in those caves, but that was an actual mining cave.
Mm-hmm. It's something that's always kind of interested me, because when you take a map that is a concise map of Bigfoot reports and you overlay it with a map of bear infested areas, they're almost identical.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
And when you lay down a map of the known cave systems in North America, they're almost identical.
Interesting.
So, the idea of these things at some point, obviously they're going to have to try to come in from out of the weather, because Minnesota is cold as ass, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Can wild animals survive it? Absolutely. They do every year.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yep. But they're looking for some kind of shelter. And I don't see any reason why, Bigfoot would not take advantage of underground cave systems to help.
Oh, I can totally see how they would utilize that.
The other thing I find very interesting, and I've asked Scott if he would work on a map of this, is a map of known reported UFO sightings throughout North America from the early 1900s. When you overlay that map, it is almost exactly the same.
Oh,
Now, I
haven't looked into that.
Now, I'm not suggesting that Bigfoot is the watchdog of aliens or anything like that. All I'm saying is that it is interesting that those things all seem to fall in the same areas. And why would that be?
Hey man, anything's possible. Like I said, I always thought the idea of Bigfoot was cool, and when I saw it, I was still in shock. I couldn't believe it. And like I was just telling my brother before you and me started talking, I'm like, dude, if the dog wasn't there, I would just think I'm crazy. Well, I probably wouldn't even have gone outside if it wasn't for her, but if she didn't act the way she did, I would just think I'm nuts. But she reacted like I've never seen her. And I've built a very good relationship with that dog, and she was not lying to me.
Yeah. What about neighbors or town folk? Did you test the waters and see if you could get anybody else in the area to have a conversation about it? Did you run across any other reports or?
Well, that's the funny thing is, I like to talk about this kind of stuff, and some people scoff at it, some people laugh at it, some people are interested by it. Well, I was getting some shit from my neighbors because, I was telling them my story, and they're asking all these questions, but not laughing at them and giving me grief. I'm like, okay, man, that's fine. You believe what you want to believe. That's fine. No worries. I get it. And then I was going to walk back home, and one of the other neighbors come running out. He's like, hey, man, so I didn't see anything. And this took place up in Bemidji. This was years ago. And he said he was out jogging, and it was at nighttime. I don't know what time of year or anything, but he said something was pacing him in the woods, and it was breaking trees as it was moving. He said, so he started sprinting, and he was running because he was in sports, and he was obviously an athlete. He's like, Josh, I was running as fast as I could. He goes, what in the hell can run through the trees, keep it up with me, breaking trees down? And these weren't little saplings. These were he said, these were 3-4 inch trees, and it was just running next to him. And then he said it ran further ahead, and then he stopped, ran back, and then it paced him back. And his dad was like, oh, it was just a deer. No, not at all. That's not even what a deer would do at all. So, and a bear, I mean, bear could break a tree, but I can't imagine it running parallel with you and then stopping and running back with you, doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
He said whatever it was toying with him, and he never saw it, but he goes, it's just something that I thought about and I think about often. And I'm like, hey, man, you could have had an experience. I mean, yeah, he believes me and everything. And other neighbors, I got some neighbors that do a lot of hunting and mushroom hunting and foraging and all that, and they're starting to warm up. And I don't know, I might have seen something. Okay, well, all I know is when you see it, you'll know.
You'll know. Won't be any mistakes, huh? That's what's so funny with some of the naysayers and the people that try to debunk it. Misidentification. Okay, if you're hundreds of yards away and you don't have any kind of optics, yeah, maybe you see a bear stand up and it's like, holy shit, I saw a Bigfoot. But when you're like what most accounts end up being is a relatively close distance, or they're viewing it through some sort of optics. And to just say that it's a misidentification, Just seems like a complete and total cop out to me.
Well, yeah, and I mean, misidentification definitely happens. Don't get me wrong, but you're going to tell me that every single person that's seen something is a misidentification? No. I mean, I can see the misidentification thing for sure, but there's no way I could have misidentified this.
I'm curious if you went back out to that tree. And the only reason I ask this is because this is something that I had not really heard much about in any accounts or anything like that, but I did find out about it from a couple of local Michigan researchers, weekend warriors, basically. And it's kind of like a signpost for them, which is deep scratches at around that 9 or 10 foot height in trees, in telephone poles, in clear cuts that, are running through fire lanes and stuff like that. It's a curious thing to me, I mean, if it's a pole that gets climbed by an electrical guy, maybe they're just being scraped by the cleats on their shoes when they're trying to climb up the pole. But
well, that too, or they could be, the Bigfoots could be marking their territory. But I mean, like where I was, I mean, we looked at that tree, didn't see nothing. I mean, but also I don't think that's also a trail for it or highway for it. I don't think that's a normal location for it to be. So maybe that's why I didn't find anything. But yeah, I mean, as far as the scratches and stuff go, I mean, if they're marking territory, maybe that's what some of the structures are too.
Yeah. What about any other weird stuff? Have you had any other experiences?
Well, I can't just definitively say this was a portal, but me and my neighbor were sitting out on his deck and just looking up at the skies and just sitting there, relaxing.
Did you say a portal?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Well, that's all, and I'm not going to say it was.
Okay,
but
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, yeah, and we were both looking up, and we both looked a certain direction, just to the right a little bit, at the exact same time. And when we did, it was like a little green, like ball, like slit almost, and it almost looks like if you shoot a BD through like a bubble where it's gone and then it leaves that little trail behind it. It was like a green glowing pixie dust trail, I want to say. It wasn't super obvious, but it left a trail and then it was just a green ball that stayed there. And we were both like, whoa, did you see that? And my other neighbor's like, what were you guys looking at? And he could still see the green ball, but he didn't see what we saw before that thing. I mean, it was pretty wild. The only thing I could describe it as was a portal. I mean, I don't know what else it could be. It wasn't an aircraft.
Interesting. Do you have an idea? Can you take a guess as to was it relatively close to the ground, like underneath cloud cover, or was it way up there, or is this something you're talking?
This was up. This looked like it was up by the stars. I mean, we were looking at the stars and watching satellites and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was up there. And we didn't see anything come through other than just that trail of like pixie dust quick. And it wasn't super bright, but it looked just like something kind of shot through it. And then it went from like the little slit in the sky to just a little green ball.
But all you were witness to was like the remnants of something coming through. You didn't see an actual
craft or anything.
Anything.
No, I didn't. No, nothing like that. No, it was just like a little green slit and then poof, and then it just turned into a little green ball. Huh. But it was nothing I've ever seen before, and I couldn't explain it. And my neighbor, he was just as dumbfounded as I was. He's like, dude, what the hell was that? I'm like, dude, we might have just seen a portal. And he's like, you think so? And I'm like, well, what else would it be? He's like, man, I don't know. That's pretty wild. And then like this far as like the paranormal stuff goes. My wife used to give me grief, and then when we started dating, she was telling me that she lived with a shadow dude named George, and the whole family was just cool with it, and that's how I started talking about Bigfoot, and I think it was just meant to be,
A shadow man, a shadow person named George.
Yep.
Can you go into that?
I mean, just from what she said, I mean, she's in the house if you want me to grab her.
Yeah, if she'd be willing to, that'd be great.
Absolutely. All right, she's busy right now cooking and all that, so she's like, I can't right now, but her story is she would see this thing, kind of walk past or whatever. It wasn't always there and interacting with anybody, but they were seeing it and they named it George. And she said one night, she had a picture of a friend of hers on her nightstand who unfortunately passed away. And this thing she would wake up odd hours of the night and she would just see this kind of mass standing at the end of her bed. And she said, I took that picture out of there. I know it was a newspaper article about him, and she never saw it again. So I don't know if it was kind of, like I said, I wasn't there, so it's speculation, but it's what she said, and they all named it George.
And the whole family knew about it.
Yep.
They'd all had experiences with it.
They've all seen it. They just ignored it and kind of just like a dog walking around, not a big deal. It ain't gonna hurt you. Just, I don't know. It's odd to me, I guess.
I'd straight up be losing my shit if I had a shadow person walking around that was that often, and everybody in the house was seeing it. I would not be doing well.
Yeah, no, I don't do good with that kind of stuff. So,
wow. Well, if she's ever interested, I'd love to hear about it because that's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely have her send you an email, and I don't know how she does with the whole podcast thing, but she'll probably definitely get a hold of you and at least tell you her story.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
So yeah, it's been I've always kind of been, do what you're told. This is how it is. That's how I was raised, kind of thing. And then you start seeing things and it just changes everything. Like, and then you look back on like the past and you're like, oh, that was weird at the time and that happened. And it's just crazy. Like, Bigfoot's real and I'm totally convinced of it.
It sounds like your dad's convinced of it too. And I wonder why he just doesn't want to talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. He just doesn't. He likes telling stories, but there's just some things that he just doesn't talk about. And I don't know if it's because of an experience. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just a military thing.
Interesting. Well, I certainly appreciate you reaching out and sharing your story with us. It was.
Oh man, it's been an honor.
It's always interesting talking to somebody who has seen one, because more times than not, the reaction is almost identical to what you're talking about. That state of disbelief, that state of trying to wrap your head around what you're seeing doesn't make sense. Trying to find something that fits that image, that it could be, it could be this, it could be that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I was looking at it and like, I knew in my heart, I'm like, that is a Bigfoot, but I was still trying to rationalize it. Like, no, it's gotta be this, it's gotta be that. But
yeah. It
wasn't. Like, I saw what I saw and the dog verified that for me. And I'm glad she was there for that. It was pretty wild, Eric.
Did she go back to acting normal after the event, or was there some trepidation in her going outside, and did she kind of steer clear of that area for a little while?
Oh, well, it was kind of late when we went in, so that after that night, we both just went in, and she snuggled up pretty close to me. She didn't want to leave my room, but the next day she was fine. Like my dad said, she was out sniffing around that tree, and it wasn't a thing. So yeah. That's what I brought up to my dad too, is when he said, he goes, she's acting weird. She's really into that tree. And I'm like, well,
they know. They definitely
know. And they're not going to lie to you.
Yeah. It's funny when it comes to, the canines, because so often you hear about, that it didn't end well for them, or that they simply did what yours did and, tail between the legs, and they're not going to retreat, but they're not going any further. My son and a friend of his rented a cabin in the Huron-Manistee National Forest a couple of falls back, and they were taking their dogs for a walk down the trail, and they got to a point. It was getting dusk. It wasn't quite dark yet, but it was on its way. They had just got up there. They were taking the dogs for a walk so they could do their business, and they got to a point on the trail, and it was done. They were like, they weren't taking another step forward. And so they turned around, they went back, they unloaded the car into the rental, and, that night they had a number of strange things, a lot of electrical discrepancies, disturbances, I guess would be a better word. Lights coming on, like on the porch, lights flickering, coming on, shutting off. It was not a motion sensor light. Telephone calls between him and I as he was looking at eye shine across the street coming out of a bunch of trees. And every time the light would turn on the porch by itself, the call would get very electronic sounding and tinny, and to the point where we would just lose signal and it was done. And then a few minutes later, the light would go back off, and he was able to get signal, and he would call me back, and he's like, I don't know what the hell's going on here. I'm getting kind of freaked out. And then the same thing would happen. And we spent from about 8:00 in the evening till probably damn near around 11. There was probably 15 phone calls back and forth. We dropped calls that often, and it was always in relation to the light either turning on or turning off on the front porch and eye shine from across the street. So, you've mentioned the word, the woo, a couple of times tonight. And, a lot of people throw the woo out with the baby with the bathwater, I don't
definitely won't throw it out.
I don't so much, because I think there are some weird things. There are some weird aspects to these things that may not be supernatural or otherworldly. It's just simply things that we don't understand about them. We have eels that can shock you, can electrocute you, so, there are animals in our natural known world that have electrical currents running through them, and, maybe it's something as simple as that.
Well, yeah, and look at tigers; they can do infrasound on their their prey. So,
tigers, elephants. There was an instance of elephants had been out of the area for a long time, and then had started to move back into this area. And the people that lived there, they started to have a kind of an explosion in suicides. And what they didn't realize was that the number of elephants that were coming in, and as close as they were to the living areas of these people, infrasound is a natural part of their communication. and people were not responding well to having the infrasound being around them all the time, and it was causing problems. And
well, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to throw out the woo at all, because I've heard enough stories, and there's a lot of similarities in a lot of them. Now, with my experience, I didn't get any weird, like I said, no aliens, no orbs, no glowing eyes. It was just this giant ass thing standing behind the tree looking at me, and I'll be damned. It looks like a Bigfoot to me, and then I see the dog, and I'm going in. It's because I've heard stories of dogs getting like ripped apart and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, I'm going to trust her, and I'm going to do what she's doing. So,
and whenever I hear about dogs being involved, I always go back to the one gentleman who was from a little further south than central Michigan, and a little bit over on the east side. His dog would run into the woods and be gone for hours and come back smelling to high hell.
Is he the one that was calling them and stuff and had the neighbors come over and everything? And
mm-hmm. And,
yeah, I remember. Yeah,
and there was a garden center or something that his dog would go with him everywhere. It was a small dog, and they had a Bigfoot statue at the garden center. And when they would go to the garden center and walk up to the front door, that dog would run up to that statue and just be all tail wagging and like wanting to play. Like
it's out there feeding it or something.
Yeah. like it was having some kind of a playful relationship with this thing.
Well, I mean, they have intelligence. I mean, you hear people, oh, they're just a friendly forest giant, or no, they're evil. I think they're just like humans. I think there's good and there's bad.
Sure.
And yeah, they got traits obviously that we don't know because it's not scientifically proven yet. But they got traits, man, that are unknown of. So who knows what they're capable of?
Right.
So yeah, I'm not going to throw the woo out at all. I mean, I think it's awesome, and I would love to see something that wild. But my experience was just natural, animal, human, whatever. Bigfoot, just chilling.
One last question about the description of it. Okay. So if you were to see a silhouette of something that had a massive amount of hair on it, and it was just big and bulky, versus something that had a thinner amount of hair rather than fur, and it laid more naturally across the musculature of the body, it would have a different shape. It wouldn't just be big and blobby. It would maybe show like the curvature of the traps coming off the neck, or the roundness of the shoulders. Was any of that apparent in what you were able to see? Or did it seem big and furry, hair covered, just like a massive amount of hair?
Okay, so when you see a really bad CGI video, there's like a kind of like a glow or fuzzy kind of appearance around it.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of looked like it was huge, and it had that kind of, I don't want to say that look because it obviously wasn't CGI, but there was no definition of muscle that I could see.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, no, it was very straight silhouette. Like you see the big giant Bigfoot cutouts. I mean, it was literally a silhouette, but I mean, I saw it move, so it's not like somebody put the thing out there and waited for me to walk out, so. Yeah. But yeah, it had kind of a weird look that I knew it wasn't like a naked guy standing there. I can tell you that much. So
that would have been more disturbing and equally as disturbing in a different way.
I'd go towards the Bigfoot in that situation.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for getting a hold of me. I appreciate your support. Thanks for being a part of the Discord community. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, my friend.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what everybody says about it. I mean, it was an experience, and I absolutely love your show. I love what you're doing, and keep doing it. It's you're helping a lot of people, even though you might not think you are, because it gave listening, like I said, your show and other shows gave me courage to come up and tell my story and my truth. And just people can mock me wherever they want. I'm the kind of person that I take everything with a grain of salt, stay open minded, and treat people right and live your life.
That's right. And that's why we create places like this for people to be able to do that and not have all the side eye and the crappy comments thrown at them. It's they're a safe place for people to come and talk about their experiences.
Yep, and you guys got a great community there on Discord. I love talking with you guys and stuff. So
it's been a unforeseen pleasure. At my age, I didn't know Discord from anything. It was a recommendation by my son that it be something that I look into, and it's been a lot of fun. It really has. I've enjoyed
never a dull moment.
Absolutely enjoy the campfires when we get to do those on the voice channel. And well, Josh, with that, I will bid you good night and thank you for reaching out. And I will let you know when this is going to air. It should be not long. I may turn around and move this to the front of the list and possibly drop it tomorrow. So
that would be awesome. I need something to listen to. I ran out of all your episodes. So
well, if you run into anybody, please, throw my name in the hat. Always looking for new stories, and a lot of them want to tell you the story. A lot of them want to talk to you on the phone, but don't want anything about to do with being on the show. And
yep. And I get that because I was nervous too because I've been under scrutiny for this, and that's fine. But it's the fact of the matter is I want to know the truth. So if I can put mine out there, if that helps other people look into things and share their truths, well, it seems like a good thing to me,
Absolutely. All right, my friend. Thank you.
All right, Eric. I appreciate it, man. It's been an honor.
Good night.
Night.